Welcome to another week of Garden Wise Adventures. This week we're going to do the last in my series about soil. Now, it's not that I'm not going to talk about soil again, because soil is the basis of gardening, but this is the last in my formal series on soil. So today we're going to talk a little bit about soil and water. Now you're going to ask, why is that important? You put water on the soil, you water your plants, and that's it. Well, there's a little bit of science to it, and you need to understand the structure of your soil, like we talked about in one of my first videos, whether you have clay, sand, or loam, to understand how water is going to interact with it. So today, I am also using this as an opportunity to bring out my homeschool momness. Yes, I homeschooled my kids for a few years, and do another wonderful, fun science experiment. So let me show you where I gathered my samples. The first place I gathered samples is out here in between my garden beds. We've got a garden bed here and my strawberry bed there. And in between, we have a hole that I dug. As you notice, I have my pickaxe out. I have my shovel. The soil between my garden beds is rock hard. When I first bought this house, I had this huge hill. There were no garden beds on it. It was all just grass, and I thought, oh my word, this is so much fun. I'm just going to be able to put garden beds in. Well, I come out here with my trusty little shovel, and what happened? I couldn't get the shovel into the ground. Tried it several different places, several different ways, so finally I had to bring out a pickaxe and a crowbar to dig out these garden beds. This is heavy clay with a lot of rock in it. In my previous videos, I had showed you where there is sand in my garden, and then I also took some soil out of my garden beds, which through the years has become a good mixture of the clay, this compost, and the sand. Now I call that loam. It has been pointed out that I'm misusing the word loam and I should call it silt. To me, silt is the fine particles that blow in, brought in by water, and then mix in with the soil. So sand, silt, and clay is what you're looking for. But compost, when you add compost, which is organic matter, into the clay and the sand, it's more of a loam. I may be wrong with the scientific terms there, but let me know. I do accept criticism most of the time. Anyway, I took some of the garden loam out of my garden beds. That's a good mixture of all of those ingredients. And let's go show you what I've come up with for my science experiments. Today we're going to do two experiments. The first one is going to kind of show us how fast water will flow through soil depending on its texture. I'm going to use sand. I'm going to use my garden soil, which is a mixture of the compost, sand, and clay, and then just pure clay. We'll see how fast the water drains through that. The second experiment that we're going to do is going to show you kind of how water is pulled through soil. So I've used sand again, the garden soil, and then clay. We're going to pour water into these little test tubes and see how fast it goes through the soil. I also added a fourth test tube where I put sand on the bottom and the garden soil on the top. And I wanted to kind of show you what happens when you do soil layers. If you want to know more about soil layers, I am going to link another video below. It can get long and boring. It's fascinating to me. I know some of you don't really want to see that, but I'm going to link a video down below that you can watch the whole process in a really scientific setup. That's a lot more scientific than mine. But let's go ahead and start these experiments and see what's going to happen. So this is my setup for my first scientific experiment. So right here, we have sand. Right here, we have my garden soil. And here we have I sifted out all the rocks that I could out of the clay. We have some colored water. And then we have some funnels that I made. This is kind of fun. And some test tubes. So what I've done is I have put some cotton in the bottom of the funnels so none of the soil will come out. I'm going to pour the soil into each of the funnels, a different type into each funnel, and then I'm going to put the colored water over the top, and we're going to see how much water comes out after I think I'll probably time it for about 5 minutes and we'll see what happens. Okay, so it took a lot longer than I thought. It took about an hour for them to completely finish draining, and the results were very interesting to me. I think as you watched, you noticed that the clay was right here. It started draining faster. We have the loam here, and it filled up the highest. The water drained through it the fastest. And then over here, which was sand, I thought was sand, seems to be a mixture of something different because it took almost a full hour for it to fully drain. Half an hour into it, there was still water in the cup that you could see. So there are tighter particles than I thought in there. In the end, the results turned out almost what I thought they would be. The most water came out of the sand by just a little bit. The second most came out of the loam, and the least came out of the clay. Now, why did that happen, do you say? Well, the sand can hold the least amount of water. It does not have a water holding capacity. That's why you have to water more. The loam, it has an attractant capability to water. That's why you mix it in with your clay and sand. It will open up the soil so the water drains faster, but it actually holds water also. This didn't hold as much water as I thought it would. And then the clay, for some reason it started out draining faster, but as you can see, it's the least amount of water. It is holding the most amount of water in the cup here. So clay impedes water because of its tight particles, but it also holds a lot of water. So clay is not necessarily bad. This is why I have never had a problem in my landscape with water not draining. So let's go back outside and we're going to pour some water in the holes that I dug and show you how fast it drains. Okay, so we're going to first put some water in this hole that has all the clay in it. And then we'll see how fast that drains. Now this hole is not as deep, obviously. It has a little more sand in it. We're going to see how fast this one drains. So now we have this hole in my front yard. We're going to put a little bit of water in there so we can see how fast that drains. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. You can see there's still a little bit of water left in that hole. There is no water left in this hole. The hole still has quite a bit of water in it, but this area does seem to retain a lot more water. It also rained last night, so the soil was pretty saturated when I threw some water in there, so it is not draining as fast. But generally speaking, this area of my landscape also drains water really well. So let's look at the second experiment I did. What I took was 4 tubes. This one has clay on top and sand on the bottom. The second one is just clay. The third one right there is just loam, and then the last one is just sand. So let's see how quickly these drain to the bottom of the tube. So as you can see, the sand made it all the way to the bottom of the tube pretty quickly. This just took about 5 minutes. In the second tube we have the loam, and it also drained to the bottom of the tube pretty quickly. It's because both the sand and the loam have large pores. The clay did not make it all the way to the bottom of the tube because of the size of the pores between the clay. It does not drain easily. And in the last one, it's really interesting, but if you notice there's still water at the top of the tube. This is called a perched water table. When you take clay and you put it on top of a larger pored substrate like sand, you will create what is called a perched water table. This is what golf courses do when they build their turf. Put clay on top of sand so that they can keep water in the root zone of their turf. So what does all this mean for my landscape, and what does it mean for your landscape? Well, how well water drains through the soil and the water holding capacity of your soil is very important. It dictates how often you water, how long you water, how many times in a cycle you will water, and how much water is available for your plant. So how can you tell how deep the water has penetrated, barring digging deep holes in your yard? There are two tools that I use when I am looking for lawn moisture, and I'm going to show you those. The two tools that I use are, number one, the screwdriver. That is the easiest tool to use when checking on lawn moisture. The second one is the soil probe. When I had a landscape maintenance business, I actually needed a soil probe. It's a little more expensive. It's about $20 or so. It is an excellent tool for assessing how deep the moisture has gotten into your soil. So I'm going to give you a demonstration on how to use both. The first tool I'm going to use is the soil probe. It has a wonderful window right here where you can actually see what your soil core looks like. You just need to push it into the ground, twisting as you go. Hope you don't hit a rock. Get it as deep as you can get it. And then just pull it out. Sadly, I cut a worm in half. You can actually see what your soil profile looks like. You can see how deep the roots are. You can see where that sandy layer starts. You can see where the topsoil is. You can see how deep the roots go. My roots are pretty deep, but I don't think they've penetrated into that sandy layer. So a soil probe is a good method to give you an overall picture of, number one, how deep the water went and what your soil looks like. So if you want to go to the expense to getting a soil probe, you can order those online, and they are a great tool to have. The second tool is much easier to use. This long-handled screwdriver, you can push it into the soil and see how deep the soil moisture has gone. When I push this into my soil, I actually hit a rock again, but you can see how deep the moisture has gone. Today is not the best day to go around and see my sprinkler coverage because it rained last night, so the entire soil profile is wet at this time. But it is a great method if you are having issues with your sprinklers, to go around in your lawn, press this down into the soil and see how easily it goes in each area. If it doesn't go in very easily in some areas and very easily in others, you know that those areas it didn't penetrate as easily into are more dry, and you may need to check on your sprinkler coverage there. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy the videos that I've been making and enjoy this channel, please click subscribe, share these videos with your friends. And if you have any questions about soil, water, or gardening in general, please leave a comment and I will get back to you. Until the next video, have a great garden.